Hi.
Hello and welcome to Knock Knock Hi with the Glaucomfleckens. I am Dr. Glaucomflecken, also known as Will Flannery.
I am Lady Glaucomflecken, also known as Kristen Flannery.
And we have a doozy of a show for you today. We're talking about something we haven't talked about yet on the show.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about physician families.
That's right. The flip side
Yes.
of a physician marriage.
All the people that kind of keep physician lives going.
Yeah. Right. I said marriage. That's a myth. It's not just marriage.
Yeah.
It's any sort of partnership. I don't know, parents,
Best
even
friend,
sure,
dog,
and
cat.
No, you're getting a little out of hand.
Not so much, but you know what I'm saying. Like the people that keep just help. They're there. They're
well, yes,
living
and not
the life
only
with
that,
you.
but right, the people that medical training and medical life is happening to also.
That's right. The co-survivors.
Yes. Right, that's what I say. I'm a co-survivor of medical training, man. That all happened to me too. Oh boy.
It sure did. Even in ophthalmology, it happened to you.
That's right. I mean, look, now is easier, but residency, no matter what specialty you're in, is a special breed of health.
See, that's why that's actually a good point. Like in my I always make fun of all these specialties, right? And I'm the first person to make fun of ophthalmology. I make fun of ophthalmologists all the time for our easy work-life balance and all this stuff.
Right.
But if you pay attention, I never do that to the residents, like to the residency programs. I don't make fun of like, oh, this residency program is so much easier than that residency program, or make any jokes around that, because all residency is hard.
Yeah.
It's grueling work. It's years of your life. And as this episode will show you, it's just as hard on the families who are there with the physician going through medical training.
Yeah, and that's an angle that's often overlooked.
Yeah. So, but before we get into that, I do have to. So often we are sitting here in this office on Mondays recording, and our kids right now are home for winter break. Normally, when we're doing this, they're at school.
They have no school today.
And so right in the middle of the episode, we hear a piece of paper kind of slide underneath the door, and our kids are 8 and 11. This is the 8-year-old.
They know they're not supposed to knock on the door. They know they're not supposed to come in, right? Like rules of recording. I'm sure everybody got a taste of it when we were all working from home during.
So we got this paper that says, I'm going to hold it up for our YouTube audience, and I'll say it. Are you almost done? Are you guys almost done? That's what this says.
Here's what I want to know. I'm not sure what is then expected of us when we get one of these notes. Do they think we're going to get up and remove ourselves from the podcast conversation and write an answer and slide it back under the door?
Hold on, podcast guest. I'll be right back.
Yes.
An urgent message from my children. I don't know.
Kids, man. No. They have different ideas about. I mean, look, they're trying.
No,
you know, it's kind of cute because they're like, I know I'm not supposed to be noisy and bother them, so I'm going to do this as silently as I know how.
All right, well, we should probably get to our guest.
Yes,
right.
Let's do it.
This is Hayley Harlock. She's a social worker and turned advocate for physician families. She's the founder of The Flip Side Life and is an adjunct assistant clinical professor at McMaster University. Has just done an incredible job bringing kind of community building and bringing the support network for physician families to have people to talk to and to learn from, and
she's a natural connector.
That's
she
right.
Connects people, she connects ideas, and some of what she's doing is really cool and overdue.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. So here she is, Hayley Harlock. Today's episode is brought to you by the Nuance Dragon Ambient Experience, or DAX for short. To learn more about how DAX Copilot can help reduce burnout and restore the joy of practicing medicine, stick around after the episode or visit nuance.com/discoverdax. That's nuance.com/discoverdax. All right, we are here with Hayley Harlock. Hayley, thank you so much for joining us. We've been looking forward to this to talk about some things we don't normally get a chance to get into.
Yes, that's right. Talk about the other side of the physician coin, I suppose, the physician families.
Yes.
That's
So thank you
right.
for being here with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with both of you, and excited to have our chat.
Yes. I know you and Kristen have crossed paths before with the flip side life.
We
Yeah, why don't
have.
you tell everyone what that is first, and then
Yeah.
we could talk
Okay.
about how we ran into each other.
Yes, absolutely. So the Flip Side Life is an organization that was established in 2019 to help support and connect physician families at all stages of training and practice. And it was actually initially when I was developing an app. I was working with a tech developer
Hmm.
to develop an app to connect physician partners wherever we may be, around the world. And that was sort of in maybe early summer 2019. And unfortunately, pursuing the app became a bit cost prohibitive because I was self funding it. And
Mm.
then lo and behold, we found ourselves in a pandemic. And that's when I realized that perhaps the app wasn't what our community needed right now, but what our community needed was sort of, boots on the ground, grassroots support. And so that's when I sort of changed the plan and just started doing just really simple reach out. I mean, I don't have the social media following that you guys do, but just went on social media the week the pandemic
Mhm.
was declared and said, our community is being hit hard. It's going to be hit hard, and I think like most people felt really helpless about wanting to help, wanting to do something. And I just said, I'll be on Zoom at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday that week and 9 p.m. on a Thursday for any partners, medical students or physicians that want to come and say hi or just want a safe space to hang out. And on that first week, when the pandemic first started in March 2020, I said to the people that came on those Zoom calls, I said, I'll be here every week until it's just me. And when it's just me on this Zoom, and then I'll know that our community doesn't need support anymore. And
Yeah.
well, it's almost been 4 years, and it hasn't just been me. So that's kind of a little bit
That's
of
great.
where things started. And the Flip Side Life, the actual name, I mean, it's a bit of a cheeky play on words, kind of what Kristen already alluded to in terms of the other side of medicine.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's a little bit about where we started.
How did you get, I guess, where did the idea come from to even like to be involved in this community and kind of the origin of that?
Right. So I'm a social worker by training. I used to work
Mhm.
clinically at a children's hospital. And during that time, my husband, we've been together for many years, but he is a vascular surgeon. At the time, he was not.
I
He was a
wasn't
medical.
going to tell you that part.
Oh, vascular
Sorry.
surgeon. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
No, just kidding.
so we so so so
Vascular
we need to come
surgery is the
back.
reason that Will went into ophthalmology.
That's
So,
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we need to circle back on that and then have a talk about that uh, for sure. But it just made me realize. So at the time when my husband was doing his training, we weren't married yet, and like I said, I was in a teaching center, and I really thought I understood the experience of medical learners, of attendings, of what that, like I had a front row seat, right? I worked with these people
Mhm.
every single day, and then, the longer John progressed in his training, he finished medical school, started residency, at first general surgery, because back in those days you had to do 5 years of general
Oh,
surgery
yeah, that's right.
before you did a vascular surgery
ugh,
fellowship.
It's like doing a
Yeah.
second residency,
yeah.
basically.
Oh, man.
Oh yeah. And
That's
and in particular, when you think that like you're done after those 5 years, I mean, we're done after those five
yeah.
years. And that was a whole nother story, how I was told that we were not done after those 5 years. But
Uh-huh.
Mm.
But just it's easier to laugh now, but
Right.
back in those days, and especially we have 3 children, and two of those not babies, they're not babies anymore, but two of them were residency babies, and
Mm.
and it was hard, and there really was no support for people like me on the flip side, and that's why in 2019, sort of when when our family came out of, maybe a not so great place and we're on the upswing, that's when sort of my instinct, my social work background, and just wanting to
Yeah.
help others and recognizing that, what, this isn't an easy experience for many people. And, what could be done differently? Because I certainly did not personally experience any support during John's training years. And so, yeah, I just, just decided to maybe take one little action that perhaps could be impactful and sort
Yeah.
of,
Yeah. And one detail that's important for Haley's story here and for the flip side life is she's in Canada. And please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not Canadian, obviously. But my understanding is that in Canada, they don't have a formalized, support system for spouses of medical trainees or partners.
Do
Um,
we have
we
one
don't. We have.
in the US?
We have, yes,
I'm not
sort of. Yes, we have the AMA Alliance
Mhm.
is an
ah,
organization affiliated with the American Medical Association that is
Mm.
for spouses, and then oftentimes residency programs
right.
will have something,
Mhm.
to at least acknowledge the existence of other members of their trainees'
Sometimes,
families.
sometimes,
Sometimes,
Sometimes.
yeah.
yeah,
It's,
that's hit or miss. Um, but my understanding is that in Canada there was basically nothing, right?
yeah, and that's correct. And it was almost just, it was so interesting because when I started doing this, so again, grassroots work, I mean, the number of things, guys, that I have Googled in the last 4 years, it's pretty humbling. Like when you feel like you know nothing, right? And just
Right.
trying to make leeway. And so when I came across the AMA Alliance, that was actually really surprising to me that okay, that there actually is some infrastructure right out there that's been there for a long time. I think like in the hundred, like I think in they've just surpassed the 100-year mark, and we didn't
Mhm.
have anything. And our system is a little bit different in terms
Mhm.
of we have 17 medical schools across the country, right? You have hundreds and you have
Right.
hundreds of residency programs. So it's a little bit smaller and smaller scale, but still there was nothing official. And it has been exciting in the last 4 years since I've been doing this work. I'll get a message from someone across, somewhere across the country, not just in this country, but outside of Canada as well, to be like, you know what, you made me think that perhaps I could do something too, in my community where I am. And so I think that's sort of the idea of like, if you don't like something, change it, right? And I had the privilege in October. I attended the American Conference on Physician Health. It was in California at the beginning of October, and Dr. Carrie Cunningham, who is amazing, she gave a keynote, and that was one of the things that she said, like and she wasn't talking about physician families, but when I heard her say that, that just really resonated. It was like, you know what? It's in all of us. Like, it's like, help when you can. We all can do something, right? Whether it's on,
Mhm.
a big scale, like what you're doing with millions of YouTube followers and TikTok followers, or if it's on a really small scale, 1 to 1 or, you know,
Right.
1 to 10. Yeah, it's
Yeah. Lots of ways to do it.
Right.
I got to ask. So your husband did general surgery residency,
yes.
and did he know he wanted to do vascular when
No.
he's so at one point he came to you and was like, "Hey, I'd like to do like 3 more years of this."
Yes. Yes. And just
What was your initial
Mm,
reaction to that?
So I'm going to set the stage for you. Well, so he's not here to defend himself, right?
Yeah.
He's at work today. So it was
Surprise, because he's a vascular surgeon.
That's
right.
right. Yeah.
So it was just before Christmas, and it was in 20. Oh, and I'm going to make myself sound really old. It was 2010, and
That's not that bad. It's
so
not that long ago.
well, feels like
Wasn't
it.
that like 3 years ago?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Couple years.
yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks, friends. That's nice. And my husband's birthday is actually Christmas Day, so yeah.
Hmm.
So we always try to sneak away and have dinner, just the two of us, somewhere in the few days before Christmas. So we went out. Our kids were really little. We had a 2-year-old and a baby, and my mom was at our home watching our kids. And we have this lovely dinner. We have some wine at dinner, and we're driving home. John's driving. I'm in the passenger seat. And it was one of those, like, when you're in an encounter with a patient and it's like one hand on the doorknob, and then
Uh-huh.
they're like, oh, doctor, by the way.
Mhm.
And it was
Uh-huh.
like, honey, by the way, I'm considering this fellowship. He's lucky he was driving and not me, because I would, just kidding. Um,
He
And
pulled the
I
birthday card on that one. He waited till you
yeah.
were almost home
Yeah.
on his birthday so you can't
Mm.
make a
There was
scene.
thought. There
Right?
was thought put into
I
this.
think so. I mean, we might have to have a follow-up conversation so he can defend himself. All these relate, these, but the craziest thing was, we're really fortunate in Canada. We get you can take up to 12 months of maternity leave. So I was actually on mat leave with well, our now middle child, and we had talked about, that I was going to quit my job and I was going to stay home for a bit, and that was totally like something that I wanted to do. So now he tells me that he's going to do 2 more years of training, and I haven't written the formal letter yet, but I've let my employer know that I'm not
Uh-huh.
coming back. I was
Oh,
that's what I'm like, no, what? We're doing 2 more years of training? Like
Yeah.
we're gonna be eating at the food bank. Like, have you
Right.
lost your
yeah.
mind?
You don't exactly get paid a lot as a fellow.
No.
No. And like I was a sugar mama for a while, back in
Uh-huh.
those
Yeah.
days, right? So yeah, I think it took I probably was in shock, but I actually think it was, you know,
Yeah.
I don't even want to admit it, but maybe it was a really good choice for John. Well, it was a good choice for John and for our family, but it's that's only looking back, connecting the
Right.
dots, looking back that you
Uh-huh.
can see that. So
I think it's hard for for
mm,
physicians, from my perspective, we have to work so hard to get through medical education and training that in the moment it's really hard to even notice like
mm,
how much is falling on the spouse
mhm,
and how much what toll those types of decisions can take
yeah.
on the family. And it's great to be in a supportive relationship, obviously, and
Mm,
I had that, and it sounds
mhm,
like you guys have that as well. Because it's so demanding, the training,
mhm,
it's kind of like we have that mindset like we got to get through training
yeah,
without even really thinking about, oh
mm,
man, like I have to go do an away rotation for
mm,
like 6 weeks in this
yeah,
other city that's like
yeah,
2 hours away. Like, what's going to happen there? Like with the
mm,
family, and
Yeah.
it's kind of
Well,
just
that's a
accepted as normal, and like it
mhm,
has to happen.
right, and that is a good example, like, at our residency
mm,
program, you know, it was kind of like a mixed bag because the response to that was, "Well, they give us an apartment
mm,
that the families can come stay and be with us." And
mhm,
so that is above and beyond what a lot of people do, so I
yeah,
do wanna acknowledge
mhm.
that. That's something for sure.
That's actually amazing, I think. I
It
don't
is
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
amazing, but then I said, "Oh, okay, 6 weeks, 2
Mm,
hours from home.
mm,
I have a job, and it's not remote,
mm,
and we have 2 children that we pay for daycare, and there's, like, a year-long wait
mm,
list, so if we pull them out for 6 weeks,
Yeah.
they're not going back in anytime soon, and if we don't pull them out, that means we're still paying oodles
mm,
of money for it, like,
Yeah.
so it's not actually considering what the life might actually look like
mm,
of the physician's partner, right? Like, to me, that felt like, while amazing that they do at least provide that apartment, it felt like they were telling me I should not be working, I
mm,
should be Susie homemaker and be able to just follow wherever he goes, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with people who would like to stay home
mhm,
and take care of children. That is
mm.
the hardest job that I have
1000%.
ever done, and I'm
Mhm.
no good at it. Like,
That's
I
a
have to
that's a
be I'm
yeah.
not saying I'm a good mom, but
Mhm.
I'm not good at not having a job and being a mom.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it just felt like they were saying, "You can't be who you are, you have to be
Mhm.
this other thing because that's what
Yeah.
works for our training program."
Well, and it's interesting, like, even okay, I use the word amazing. That's amazing they found you an apartment. And as those words were coming out of my mouth, I'm like, we've actually set the bar pretty low. So they've
Right.
agreed to find, you know, meet a
Housing.
basic need, right? But
Yeah,
but the
Right.
but the reality is the bar has been set really low because there's
right.
Yeah.
tons of programs across North America, beyond that, that's not even a consideration. And I think that's the problem is that, there's been this perceived disconnect forever in medicine where it's like, physician, patient, healthcare system, and then physician families over here. And I use the word family, you can like very broadly, right? Whether that's your
Mhm.
partner, your children, your
Right.
parent, however, your best friend. But there's always been this perceived disconnect. And it's interesting. when you think about it, because, Will, if you have a bad day at work,
Mhm.
does it not impact when you walk in the door? Even if you can
Oh,
compartmentalize,
yeah.
right? You right?
Oh,
And
absolutely. It's why
it's
I wanna I kind of, treasure my 20-minute commute now
Mhm.
versus, like, 3 minutes,
Right.
because, like, sometimes I need that time.
Right. Or on the flip side, if something's going on big at home,
Mhm.
that is going to impact you. I'm not saying it's going to necessarily impact your, ability to, provide, compassionate, quality patient care. But
Right.
in the back of your mind, of course, it's going to be
Yeah,
impacting. And
for
I
sure.
think we've just, medicine as an institution and medical culture just has never perhaps stopped to take into account that, oh, there's other people behind this physician, right? But I think it's, I guess also, that physicians perhaps in the past, you've been put up on this sort of pedestal, if you will, like physician, but
Uh-huh.
not
Right.
physician as human. A-
Right.
And I think that perhaps COVID and the early stages of the pandemic put a bit of a tilt to that, where it was now okay, doctors are human. And then unfortunately, I feel like that was short-lived. And then there was parts of the pandemic where it was like doctors were vilified,
Mhm.
to a
Yeah.
certain extent. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, they're just, I think in any profession, right? You as like, we're all human, and our work does affect our personal life, and vice versa at times.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I that is I'm doing it again. One of my many soapboxes. Would you for Christmas, would you just get me an actual like
Oh,
soapbox?
I already did. It's
Yeah.
you just
Okay.
ruined your
Surprise.
Good.
surprise.
That'll help. No. That medical training doesn't see its trainees
Yeah.
as full people. It
Mhm.
just sees them for what they can do for the system and what they need to learn in order to function in the system.
Mhm.
And it doesn't consider, all of the rest of what goes
Mm.
into being a good doctor.
I think part of that problem is also just historically,
Mhm.
at least in this country, how residents and trainees, fellows they're perceived as cheap labor
Hmm.
and, and, a position that can be government funded,
Mm.
and in a healthcare system like ours that's so focused on generating profit
Mm.
that is coveted. And so some lots of programs, they approach residency the way it should be approached. Like we're training the next generation of doctors to be empathetic and to
Mm.
be their best possible physician selves. But like there are programs
Mm.
out there that see it more as like, oh, look, we can, just saddle this person with so
Mm.
much work,
Right.
and because look at the value. This
Yeah, very
essentially they're
similar to
working
like
minimum wage,
the
and
Mm.
grad student,
right.
in the more academic,
Mhm.
less medicine realm. It's kind of the analog to that.
And so it's setting trainees up for this kind of moral injury, the burnout, and which obviously is going to extend to the family life
Mm.
as well. And so, can you speak to a bit about burnout and like?
Yeah. Well, can I just back up for one
Oh,
second? Maybe
sure, yeah.
maybe think about something just as you were speaking. But like, if you think about residency training,
Mhm.
and it's you guys were together during your training, and Kristen, you already gave a great example of even just having to potentially relocate for 6 weeks, right? So why is it that we've never taken a pause to stand back and recognize that partners and significant others are directly impacted by this experience, like directly impacted. There's
Hmm.
lots of, sacrifices that go in along the way, whether it's career, whether it's family sacrifice, but yet there's no sort of acknowledgement that they're part of this journey, that the journey is, I mean, in our house, it was our journey. Yeah, John was
Yeah.
doing the work at
Yeah,
the hospital, but it was our journey. And I think that's something that, um, I think just like like Will just said, like it just because historically, you know, trainees perhaps have been thought of in a certain way. So sometimes I think this conversation is really just a conversation that's never been had before, right? So sometimes when something like this is not rocket science, it's actually quite simple. But what if we just took a moment to just acknowledge, include, and support the people that are coming along to residency, right?
yeah,
And something as simple as like when you match to a program, once you've accepted the offer, perhaps it's like, is there anyone, and this doesn't always work, I understand if it's a really large program, but even something like, an email to say, who's coming with you? Is anyone coming with you that we should know about? Kristen, I don't
Mhm.
know what your experience was like, but I feel like during my husband's training, I feel like there were some years where I met the same people over and over again, and I got reintroduced, and I was like, I remember
Mhm.
who you are. Like,
Right.
and it was like, and that was just sort of I don't know, just almost like a defeating thing when you're already feeling like you're not part of this
Yeah.
experience that is directly impacting your life every single day, 24 hours a
Yeah.
day.
And it's never giving you anything positive. It's only ever doing negative things. And
Mhm.
so it's really easy to build a lot of resentment.
Yes.
And I think that's maybe part that people don't always feel like they can talk about.
Mm,
There's this image of what a physician's spouse must be like. And historically speaking, it was the doctor's wife, right?
mm. Yes.
And that it must be this really glamorous thing. And you're so lucky because your husband makes all this money and you can just
Mm.
do nothing but lay around or whatever you want to do. I don't know, eat
Right?
bonbons all day.
Right?
But that's not at all what it's like. And
It's
nobody really talks about that. It it creates a lot of anger, I
Mhm,
think. At least
mhm.
for me,
Yeah.
even now, what, 7 years or something out
Mhm.
of training, I'm just
Yeah.
kind of coming to terms with the fact that I have had to live through
Mhm.
a lot of anger and resentment, but
Yes.
just stuff it down because it was no one's fault per
Mhm.
se, right?
And
And so you just live with it.
absolutely. And I think you just nailed that one. It's true. And I think that's where, why community and connection is so
Mhm.
important, especially during
Right.
these formative years during training for people. Like, think about maybe during your residency, well, like the people you were with every single day, right? Whether like those become your people because
Yeah,
you're
it's another family. Yeah,
yeah. And there's a lot of partners that don't have
right.
anyone to build community with, and that's something that like feel that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I have no right. I think physician families are exceptionally altruistic. I think that's
Mhm.
Mhm.
runs very deep, and I think we're very quick to acknowledge privilege, but then when things are hard for us or we're struggling, we're quick to put up, to say, okay, but
Mhm.
somebody else has it worse. And I think this idea, I don't know if you guys are Brene Brown fans, but I am. And fun fact, she's also a physician spouse.
Mm,
Um, and I don't know her, wish I did, but I don't. But she talks about, this idea of comparative suffering. And I think
Mhm.
that's just it, is that two things can coexist, right?
Yeah.
We can all,
yeah.
acknowledge the privilege that we have, but that also doesn't negate our own experiences. And I think if
Right.
that was something that was perhaps maybe framed better for partners especially during the training years, I think like the resentment, that anger that you're talking about, Kristen, I think could be minimized, maybe even
Yeah.
alleviated, right? If people had an outlet. And um,
Right.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah, because it's
something.
a long time to just feel invisible
Mhm.
or secondary, right? That
Ye-
that you're less important,
mhm.
right? There's an entire program saying that the physician is the one that, they are not that they are
Mhm.
treating them well either, but everything is revolving around that person. And so then it's like, well, what about me and my goals and my needs as
Right.
the partner to that
Right.
person?
Even simple things like when I've heard so many stories from both physicians and partners over the last several years that I've been doing this work of just saying like, we didn't even know we uprooted to a different city, sometimes a different state or province, country. And we had no idea where to even start looking for housing, looking like just basic things that you need to thrive while you're doing medical training. And some of these
Yeah.
things, again, really simple um, to make better and don't cost a lot of money, but we just have to think about them a little bit differently. And um, yeah, and I think everybody's deserving of support, right? And
It kind of reminds me of Kristen's experience around my cardiac
mm,
arrest, and as the family member
mm,
of somebody
yes,
going through medical issues, and just being
mm,
recognized, and or the lack of recognition there
yeah,
was very similar, very
Yeah, I
similar.
in fact bring that into my talks. I
hmm,
think the talk that we did, I say that I am a
yeah,
co-survivor of medical training
yes,
also.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that all happened to me too.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought that up because that's something, I mean, you and I have had that conversation. We've had it online, offline. I've seen, you talk about that on other podcasts that you've done, other episodes, and it's so true. And I think in healthcare, we try to do, or we're working on doing a better job at, patient-centered care, family-centered care, a much more holistic approach. But what if we also did that, starting in training with our medical learners and their loved ones too. And just to go back to, Will, what you started asking about, burnout,
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that physician mental health and well-being starts at home. And so if we're looking at physicians and physician families more holistically, then perhaps maybe physician families are the missing link or the missing puzzle piece in the conversation related to burnout. And
Yeah,
Yeah, if
I
you
totally agree.
support the family, then that's
mhm,
a huge, burden off of
yeah,
the whole family, but including
mhm,
the physician to go do
mhm.
their work. That's
Absolutely.
so demanding.
Let's take a break real quick because I've got some more questions for you
Okay.
guys. Hey, Kristen, doesn't it seem like AI can do anything?
It seems that way. It's
Right?
everywhere.
It is. But have you heard of Precision?
No, tell me.
This is the first ever electronic health record integrated infectious disease AI platform.
That sounds fancy,
Yeah,
but
it's
what does it
really
mean?
exciting. So for any specific patient, it takes all the patient's clinical data and automatically highlights better antibiotic coverage in real time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it empowers clinicians to save more lives while also working more efficiently and
Mm.
quickly. To see a demo, go to precision.com/KKH. That's precision spelled with an X instead of an E. So prxion.com/KKH. All right, we are back with Hayley Harlock, and I have another question that I'd love to hear from the physician spouse perspective.
Mm.
How do you feel about medical conferences? Are these just like, because it's different than call. We already talked about
Mm,
call, and
Mhm.
mhm,
there's this like kind of feeling like, oh well, they need your help. For the most part, medical conferences
mm.
are completely superfluous.
Mhm.
Uh, for
Well,
like, so let's be honest, like we can get our CME
there's some
online,
element
Mhm.
of
all right?
luxury. Yeah, sure.
Right.
Sure.
So is that do you get frustrated when we have to go to conferences?
Not if you take me with you. If it's a cool place.
Yeah,
Haley,
right.
do you get to go?
Yes, I like the answer. If it's a cool place, yes, I'm in. I think when the kids were a lot younger, I think, and I didn't see my partner very often, I think those conferences
Yeah.
actually were an opportunity for us to see each other for a few minutes, and then I didn't feel bad if we were asking grandparents to come and stay.
Oh,
Mhm.
there you go.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of finding those silver linings. But
Hmm.
my husband goes to Winnipeg, Manitoba every April for a conference, and it's right around our anniversary. And for
Oh
many,
no.
many years, he misses our anniversary, but he invites me to come with him.
To Winnipeg.
Yeah,
What time of year? What time of year in
She
Winnipeg?
said
April,
April.
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 So
Oh,
it's
it's nice and warm, right?
I don't think so. So
No.
so I've never, and no offense to anyone who's in Winnipeg, but I'm just like I was
Yeah.
if
It's not exactly a
like
vacation
no,
destination.
but
I
if it
think,
was
Is that
summer,
where in
yeah.
Manitoba? Is that southern, middle, or northern province?
it's like middle-ish, like middle-ish.
Middle-ish? Okay.
But I like
Gotcha.
I have some friends that are from Winnipeg, and they
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
affirmed that it can be,
Yeah,
especially in the
like,
winter,
do you
it's
wanna
cold
go to
there.
Minnesota in April? This is way worse.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Is it?
that's a good point.
You know? But
I
it's
do April, it would be probably okay, but yeah, this
It's
is
way
I
further
know.
north
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
than even
Yeah.
Minnesota.
I was
It's
once
a
invited to speak in Saskatchewan
mm,
in February.
yes, that's cold too. That's very
Yeah.
cold.
I had to think about that one for a
Yeah.
little while.
But I think, if like what Kristen said, if John invited me to a conference that had somewhere at the beach and palm trees, I'm all in. Like, I'm
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
girl. I'm there.
Yeah.
But actually, that's something that I've started to do in the last couple of years, is partnering with some specialty societies to do adjacent events for
That's awesome.
partners.
Oh, that's such a good
Yeah, it
idea.
really
Yeah.
is.
Recognizing that there's a
Oh,
lot of
wow,
partners
yeah.
that do go. And sometimes, sometimes it is great, perhaps to have a little break. So while your spouse is
Yeah,
doing the conference thing, to be on your own. And then there's sometimes where it would be nice to have a little connection with other people. So um, I did,
definitely.
yeah. So I've been doing that. And it's been a really cool experience where you can put a whole bunch of strangers in a room together, and there's only one common denominator, and it's this experience of being part of a physician family. And
Mm.
I know it sounds a little bit like cheesy or cliche, but it's been so amazing to watch every single time where people come in the room or whatever it is that we're doing. Usually, involves some food and, they're social events, but watching people come in strangers and leave as friends and,
Mhm.
Yeah.
numbers are being exchanged and things like that. And so,
It's like instant trauma bonding to be
yeah, a
part of
little
a
bit,
Really,
physician
right?
really
family.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think, so conferences, maybe I have a different perspective now, Will, but, you know,
Yeah.
I'm
I think,
still
that's great. I
yeah.
think there's just should
It's
be s
such a good
it really
idea.
is a good
Mhm.
idea.
Yeah.
It's really needed, and I'm curious, do you in the work that you've done with
Mm,
Flipside Life and otherwise,
mhm.
do you do you see more specialties represented in terms of people wanting that connection? I'm just curious, like, is there a difference between, like, neurosurgeon families versus,
Oh, that is a good
family
question.
medicine or
Yeah,
ophthalmology or internal
yeah.
Yeah.
medicine?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some specialties that perhaps the experience, well, it depends, right? I think training is pretty, can be pretty difficult
It's gonna be
for all,
Yeah.
hard
right?
regardless,
That's an
right?
equalizer. Yeah. Just
Yeah,
Yeah.
any training.
any training, but I mean, I think the underlying experience, the
Yeah.
commonalities are still there, right? And perhaps just different, like maybe on a scale, right? Or
Right.
it could also be, season and like whatever the individual or family is going through, right? That makes it
Yeah.
more challenging at the
It
time.
might also be, like,
Mm.
post-training, because like,
Mhm.
my life now in my job
Mhm.
is
Oh, yeah. It's a 180
it's so much
from
Right?
easier, right?
training. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
might not
Well, yes and no. I mean,
Mm.
yes, you have a nicer schedule, but there are some things that are still
I still
the
take
same.
call.
Like
Mm.
you do still take an easier call, but
Mm.
you your schedule is so rigid and difficult to change, even if it's
Mm.
just clinic. And any one small change in your schedule, then it like results in 15 other changes for other people.
Right.
So then what that translates to is that
Mhm.
even though I also am working,
Mm.
I'm the one that takes the kids to the doctor's appointments. I'm the one that does anything with, the plumbers coming over
Mm.
and, anything that involves any sort of, you know,
More urgent need.
urgent or just it has to happen during a workday,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah,
business hours. That's going to be me even now,
It's
yeah.
and I think that's also true and common, like sort of that default partner, right? That takes on
Yeah.
the extra stuff. And then in dual physician families, there's even like
Oh
there's
my
like you're
god.
right, there's an
Yeah.
element of one person is kind of designated as the default, whether it's like, the kids get sick, if there's not someone else to go get them, it's like, okay, well, I you can't leave the OR, but I guess I can leave my clinic. And
Right. Yeah, and it's this like competition of who's
mhm,
it's whose schedule is more flexible, but it feels like whose work is more important.
right.
Who gets
Right.
to be the one that doesn't have to deal with all the other stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to have really, really good communication amongst partners,
Yeah.
right? Right from the very beginning.
Mhm.
And that's something that I did not do well with my partner. And when I said before about feeling, embarrassed or shameful, was because as a social worker, I'm pretty good at communication. And if you want some tips, I can help you do that. But I wasn't doing it in my own relationship, and that made it really hard, right? And so I think, if those strategies are employed very early on, if between partners during training, then hopefully by the time you get to the point where you're in attending, maybe you have some good habits that are already in place that make life easier for everybody.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really important to communication is definitely one big thing, and then having your own thing
Mm,
is really important
yes.
as a physician spouse or partner,
Hmm.
because the schedule is so demanding, especially during training.
Hmm.
That and it's one of the reasons why the flip side life is so valuable is because it offers connection and
Mm,
opportunities to kind of find your own people and your own things, and that is so critical because if you don't have that and you're just
mm,
sitting at home waiting because you have like a fantasy in your mind of what marriage is supposed to look like, for example,
mm,
especially in those early years, that's not going to be what it looks like, probably. And so if you don't have something else
mm,
that fulfills you too,
mhm,
like it's, I always try to be really careful because I remember Googling when we were engaged. This was way longer ago than I would like to admit, but I was trying to find information about like,
mhm,
well, what is it really actually like to be attached to a
Mm,
physician and, be at the mercy of all of these
right.
systems and institutions. And so all I could do was Google, which is never what you want to do. I
And
found all sorts of horror stories. And I just remember, I think you even
yeah,
came home or something, and I was just on the couch just crying, like, is this going to be my life?
right?
So I always try to be very cautious about like
Mm,
it's not all bad. There are so many
no,
wonderful things and you can still have a very meaningful relationship.
absolutely.
It's just that you should be aware going in that there may
Mm,
be these certain areas where there's going to be maybe a little bit of additional effort required
mhm.
or at least, some
And
thoughtfulness
yeah,
ahead of time.
absolutely. And I think in any relationship, right? Whether we're talking about in medicine or not, but I think between partners, there's seasons, right? There's seasons in a
Yeah.
relationship. There's times where maybe I can only give 25%, but maybe my partner can give 75%, right? And that's what, that's that sort of dance of partnership. But if you haven't had haven't had those conversations, those hard conversations, and you know what, we didn't have those hard conversations. And I don't know about you, Kristen, but I used to feel so sorry for John when he would come in, like after not sleeping for too long. He'd be out for a
Yeah.
day and he'd come in, and once we had the kids, he's an amazing dad. And so he would come in and I would try to I'd be like, oh, don't worry, I got the kids. And he's like, no, no, I want to spend time with them because that like I haven't
Mhm.
seen them. And that's sort of my like, I don't know, like uplift of in his day. And so he
Yeah.
would get on the floor and he'd play with them till he was pretty much asleep on the floor.
Right.
And then there wasn't time left, or if something was bothering me, I would put it in my back pocket and be like, okay, I'll talk
Right.
to him tomorrow. And then tomorrow something else would come up. And then when you continuously do this in a partnership and you're not talking about what you need to talk about, that's where
Yeah.
the resentment or the anger, and then it doesn't do anybody any good. But these are things that, you know, if we talk more openly in medicine about these things that are experienced, I think it would be such a service to everybody, right? Because they're normal things. They happen to all of us, whether we want to admit it or not, but we don't talk about it. And I've said so many times, communities found in our collective stories. So the more we share these stories, and whether it's about feeling, isolated or not having support, or whether it's, something maybe you're struggling as a physician with mental health or physical health issues, right? The more we talk about it, what happens? We can reduce stigma. And that's something that
Yeah.
we're getting a little bit better at doing
Mhm.
in medicine, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
I had a whole list of games that I could play with the kids,
Mm.
where I was lying on the ground,
Yeah.
like lying on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
And
It's
Race the car on daddy's back.
right.
Check daddy out, be a doctor. Yeah.
those because I remember those, post-call
Mm.
days, and you're so exhausted, but you still wanna, be there for the little babies,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
and it's hard, and I think that was the one thing, and I owe John a big apology, like reflecting back, but sort of when you get stuck and feeling like you're the only one experiencing this, and like what was that like? I got to be home with the kids, I got to be there, and have all this time where he would have these little pockets of time, and to recognize that, yeah, it's hard on the flip side again for the trainee, or
Mhm.
the who's going through this, to be missing on missing whatever birthday parties, family events, right? That's hard too. And I think that also needs to be recognized as well, that it goes both ways, right? That there's
Yeah.
things being missed out on both sides.
Right. And it's too easy to make it into a competition, right? Of like,
Exactly.
I'm suffering this much. Well,
Hmm.
yeah, well, I'm suffering that much. And,
Right.
the thing that helped me the most, I don't remember where I heard it. I wish I did, but I think I heard it during residency, and it was that it's not, you can't think of it as me versus you.
Yes.
You have to think of it as us versus the world,
Yeah.
right? Like us versus these circumstances that
Yes.
we are in. And it is an us, and it is hard for both of
Hmm.
us in different ways, but we're in it
100%.
together.
Absolutely.
And it's not productive to kind of fight with each other about it.
Mm.
It's more productive to see what can we do about this environment that we're in? Where can we find some
Mm.
release valves,
Mhm.
and some
And
support?
And it's that idea of like we're on the same team, right?
Yeah.
And especially on days when it doesn't feel like you're on the same team, but you are. Like
Yeah.
if and I've done a lot of self talk over the years, right? When I'm feeling like I can feel that feel, we're on the same team. That's the
Yeah.
affirmations of, and I have this. I should pull it out. It's in one of those memory boxes somewhere. But when we thought John was finished, like residency was coming to an end. He was studying for his board exams, um, and it was Valentine's Day. And I'm not a big Valentine's Day person, but it was sweet. He left this card, and it was on like computer paper with black pen and his scrappy handwriting, and it said "Happy V Day." And I opened it up, and the message inside, and it's still it actually makes me choked up when I think about it. To share this with you, and it said, "Happy Valentine's Day. I can't wait for this to be over." Over meaning training to be over,
Right, right, right.
right?
Not like
It's
your
like,
relationship,
yeah, can't
because
wait.
that would
Yeah,
be a different kind
yeah,
of
it
Valentine's
would
Day
be
card.
right. That'd be a post-it note, I think. But sort
Yeah.
of the idea of like, and his acknowledgement in saying, I know I'm a good doctor, I know I'm a good dad, but I can't wait for this to be done so that I can be a good partner again.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think like it does that. Like that hurts my heart when I
Yeah.
think about that, thinking like, how hard must that be on the other side, right? To feel like that guilt of like, you feel like you can't, you're not giving
Mhm.
100% to anything except for your job. And I think that's really hard too.
Right.
Right.
I have to ask one more question about John. Does when he comes home like much later
Mm,
than like you thought and everybody
yeah.
thought he'd be home, how often does he blame anesthesia for that?
Oh, you know what? And I'm not just saying this.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't really.
Oh, whew,
No, he
wow.
doesn't. I told you,
That's very nice of him.
he's a nice guy. Like, I don't
I
know.
just I just had to ask
Yeah.
because
Maybe, maybe he
those
thinks it,
anesthesia delays
right?
they really put a
A damper on
put
things? I
put
don't
a put
know.
a wrench in
Okay.
everyone's plans, but no, that's
That's
it.
telling me that anytime you blamed anesthesia, that no, you don't even get
I
anesthesia.
I don't.
You
We
don't have that excuse.
yeah, it's not something ophthalmologists really have to
But next
contend
time
with.
he's late and
Ask him.
I'm gonna ask him,
Yeah.
was this
Well, that's
you
what you can
or
do if you want some points. Yeah, like,
right.
I know, anesthesia.
Yeah.
They take forever every time. It's okay. I'll go yell at him.
But
Yeah.
one of the things that actually was a game changer in that, like expecting him to be home. And this sound maybe some people think this is creepy, but I didn't even know, like thank goodness for tech. But he would text and say, "Okay, I'm leaving." And then 3 hours would go by and he
Mhm.
was not home yet. And it's about a 25-minute drive from the hospital to
Uh-huh.
home. Or, when the kids were younger, it'd be like, "Okay, well, we're gonna wait and eat with dad." And then this would happen.
Yeah.
So then we had this thing of, okay, call me from the car when you've actually exited the
Mhm.
parking lot. And even and
Right.
even sometimes that always didn't work, right? Where you're leaving the parking lot and you get called
Yeah.
back in. So then he said to me, he's like, "I put this thing on your phone, or this Find My Friends thing."
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
he's like, "So you can just see where I am, and then you'll know if I've left or not." And I was like, "Wow, why?" Genius. And
Great.
how many arguments are like frustration. So if it's like
Right.
we're ready to eat or we're ready to go somewhere, and oh, dad's still at the hospital, that's it.
Yeah.
And then I
Right.
made the mistake one day of asking him, I'm like, "Do you ever look for me during the day to see what I'm doing?"
Uh-oh.
And he said,
Oh.
"No." No. Can you believe it? So
Uh,
How rude.
yeah, but top tip. So if
yeah, right. I think the getting home time is always tough.
Mm,
And what I've learned is you can't really go backwards.
mm,
So like I was a resident where I was getting home like routinely like 7 o'clock,
mhm,
sometimes 8 o'clock at night, and then now I'm a private practice
mhm,
ophthalmologist and I'm home by like 5 or 5:30, and if I ever got was going to be home like after 6,
mm.
it's like, what is going on? This is what a
What took
horrible
you so
Right.
what
long?
took you
Yeah.
so long? Oh my God,
Oh,
that's a how
Yeah.
what's this is terrible. And so
right,
I think
anyway,
back to the days where you would like maybe not come home that
yeah,
night. And I'm
we
like,
need
okay, this
right.
isn't so bad.
we need to keep somehow figure out a way to keep perspective about some of these things,
Yeah.
with time. But
But,
yeah,
I
it's
think that's the thing, like, I don't know about your kids, but when our kids were really little, John did a good job at showing up for as many things as he could. And he's coached lots of our kids' sports teams and things like that. And so he's been as present as he possibly can, considering the job he does. But when they were little, in the olden days, when he was a resident and a fellow, there was actually a pager, right, that would go off with that horrible beeping noise.
Yeah.
And our oldest, it was like Pavlov's dog. He would cry on demand when that thing went, like that noise would
oh
go
no.
off, because he knew that that noise meant that his dad might leave. And I think it was over the years, like being able to explain to them, and even when they were much younger, that why isn't daddy here? Well, daddy's not here because somebody else needs him right now more than than we do, and sort of reframing it and to be able to say like, we're sharing daddy today, right? Because somebody else, and I think that's really, you know, I think our kids are more compassionate and empathetic of other people, at perhaps a younger age
Hmm.
than maybe they would be if they hadn't had that experience of, their dad
Yeah.
being a doctor. And I don't know if that's same
That's a
in
whole
your house.
nother conversation, right? Is like, how do kids
Mm,
experience medical training?
yeah.
Because a lot of people do have kids early
Mm,
on. We had our
Right.
first in
Med school?
third year,
mm,
into my third year of med school,
yeah.
and and so, and I honestly don't know if I've like ever like talked to her about it. I mean, she was, under 5,
Hmm.
Yeah.
so
I think I misspoke earlier. It was the older one that said that's where daddy lives about the
Mm,
oh yeah,
hospital. So,
yeah.
I think she would remember some of that.
hmm.
She remembers living in that town and all of that. But
So, and I think there's a lot of kind of a fear. I know I felt it,
Mm,
whenever I was working so much in residency that, if missing even like the little things
right.
felt like a huge, like I'm scarring this child for
Mm,
life, because I'm not there to see her, take her first steps or
mm,
whatever it is. Which I think in looking back on it now was was an exaggeration,
yeah.
of the impact
Mm,
that my absence at times would
hmm.
have on them growing up, because there's ways to,
Mm,
to uh, compensate, and
yeah, I think if they feel safe and cared
hmm.
for and they
yeah.
feel your love
Hmm.
and as they get older, they start to
Yeah.
understand that you're doing it's not because of them that you're leaving,
Hmm.
Right.
right? They feel safe and loved. They're
Hmm.
gonna feel okay. I mean, kids are a lot more
They
resilient
are.
than people give them credit
Right.
for. And I
Yeah.
think they do still form a really strong bond,
Of
just because
course.
of that love and
Mm.
safety.
Yeah.
Do either of your children have any early interests in pursuing medicine?
Not really.
No.
Well, the
But
younger one
at times they've
have at time,
Yeah.
yeah. One of them is more like me, like she's into science a
Mm.
lot, but bodies are
Is it-
gross.
Right.
That's
yeah.
she and I are similar that way.
Hmm.
And then there's another one has expressed some interest in being an eyeball doctor
I
like
don't know what
Yeah.
daddy,
she's gonna do in
Yeah.
her
but she
life.
It's
also
a,
just is very much like
Yeah.
whatever the other people are doing, that's what she wants to do. So we'll
it's
see.
our youngest used to say when he was really little, he'd say, I want to be a vascular surgeon like daddy. So I would work
Oh.
with him. And so sometimes on the weekend, if John was going to go in and see a patient, he would take our youngest with. And our little guy loved going. But he's now decided professional sports is where it's at. And it's funny, our daughter, she used to say for the longest time that maybe medicine was something she was interested in. I don't know that any of our children are going down that path, but she had kind of had a cool experience uh, earlier in November. There was the first Wednesday in November is take your kids to work day if you're in ninth grade. And so she got to go to work with her dad. And
Mm.
she was sending me, texts, and she told me that this was just like the best day ever. And I think that's something, right? Like where again, when you talk about partners or families or children, you know, your work as a physician is almost like a bit of a mystery, right? Like it's not like
Hmm.
your partner or your kids get to go to work, well, for the most part, right? Like I've never gone to the OR with John to hang out and have a snack and
Right.
watch him work, right? And sit there. And so I think that that's like another piece that's missing out of
Yeah.
sometimes of feeling part of the experience or not really understanding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. And how cool is it to get to see, the person that you love and are sharing your life
Yeah.
with in their element doing the thing that
Hmm.
they've been trained to do? That would be really cool.
So she
I
felt
mean, I could pull up some cataract surgery videos for everyone.
No, it's
Like
all right.
you could just load it on YouTube, just get it
have
going.
have you never had the experience when our kids were younger? John would have, I guess, I don't know, I'm not techie enough to do whatever. Our TV in our family room would be hooked up to something
Yeah.
on his phone. So when his phone would
Oh,
go like
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
and so there'd be like bloody
Mhm.
like things. I don't know, like
Yeah, sometimes I'd be
a
flipping
check.
through his phone, like cute pictures of
Yeah,
kids. Oh,
yeah,
oh my
yeah.
god!
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
would
Like some
be
yeah.
horrible eyeball.
it would be on the screen, right? It would be on like the TV, and
Yeah.
they would, and so our kids are pretty unfazed, but
Yeah.
they've been trained because they'd say like, "What happened to this?"
Right.
Anyways, but yeah, they're
Yeah.
Well, vascular surgery
it
is
is,
like the bloodiest thing
it
ever.
is,
Yeah, it's
it
in the
is,
name,
it
Yeah.
you
is,
know?
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. dinner table conversations in physician homes
Mm.
are not for the faint of heart.
No.
Well, as we mentioned at the beginning, like it's because of the vascular
Yeah.
surgeons that I chose ophthalmology as a
So
career. The
Yeah,
stuff
you
they
never
do in
know.
vascular, it's cool.
Yeah.
Like it's really it's hard specialty, but
Do you
some of
have a
the
full drawer in your bedroom full of compression stockings?
I do. I'm actually a convert, but I
Oh,
don't.
even she's got in on it.
there you
Yeah,
go.
I'm going to send you some. What color do you want, Kristen? Kristen,
But
no, but I don't really like socks. Like, but
Yeah.
I'll wear the athletic sleeves where your feet are free. So always
Oh
on
yeah.
airplanes,
oh,
always.
Oh, so it's pushing
yeah.
keeping
Yeah.
you from getting swollen and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yes.
it's good stuff.
So, but yeah, I don't know.
Well,
Spanks for your legs.
Right.
that's right. The leg spanks.
Just one of these days, you're going to check your mailbox and there's going to be a little
There you
surprise.
go. I can't wait. Looking
Yes.
forward to it.
It's, it's good.
Well, Haley, before we let you go, we want to make sure we mention again the things that you're involved in. So we talked about the flip side life,
Mm.
and then also, do you have anything else that you'd want our audience to know about?
Well, I think if you are the partner of a medical student or a physician, and perhaps you're feeling like maybe a little bit isolated, a little bit lonely, I think the take home message is that you're not alone. There's a whole community of us out there,
Oh yeah.
waiting to meet you, welcome you. The Zoom calls that I continue to do, they're Thursday nights. There's a little bit of a hiatus until after the holidays, but everybody's welcome to those. There's no sign up required. There's no cost to join.
Where can
And
people find those?
so if you on social, you can go. I'm pretty easy to find. So Hayley Harlock, if you look me up on social, and everything that's mine personally is associated with the Flipside Life.
Okay.
You can or go to theflipsidelife.com and some of the events, including the Thursday night calls, are also listed on the website. And stay tuned. Like we also do some fun events. We had a holiday party last week. It was a holiday fiesta. We did a Mexican cooking class with a chef live from Mexico City. That was pretty fun.
Wow.
Um,
That's awesome.
and some of the work with some of the specialty societies and associations. I look forward to doing more of that in 2024 and beyond. Of just
Mhm.
in making physician partners feel more a part of this journey. But one of the things that I've been working on with a small and mighty team of researchers from McMaster University is a project looking at the experience of residency and fellowship on both the medical learners and on partners. And I know this is a cause obviously near and dear to my heart, and it's really important and it's exciting because we just don't have enough data on what that experience
Mhm.
looks like. And so, um, hopefully, we're just writing up a paper that hopefully will be published soon on the first phase of that project, which was a survey, a cross sectional survey, and we just wrapped up last week. Qualitative interviews with residents, fellows, and partners, and they were, yeah,
Oh
amazing that
wow.
people, gave us their time and really wanted to share their stories and their experience. And I think once we have more data, doctors, medical
Yeah.
culture, medical systems like data. Once we have more data, then we can design some interventions to make this experience better for everyone. And I think one of the things that that I know myself and the team that I'm working with is really proud of is that we've tried really hard to make this a really diverse, you know, group that we're capturing from. So, understanding that it's not a one size fits all approach in terms of what the experience looks like, but looking at everything from race, culture, gender identity, things like that. PGY year as well. So I
Mm.
feel like we've cast a wide net in terms of who's been part of this first and second phase of our project, and I think we have a responsibility once we know more, we have to do better, right? And I
Right.
think if change happens early on in training, that's when we're going to see the change, the long-standing changes, in practice as well.
That's great.
I love
Yeah.
that. One of the and Haley would never say this about herself, but one of the other things that's so great about Haley is she is such a champion for not only physician families. I know that's kind of in
Mm.
your on your website, but she is a champion for women. Like
Mm.
she is the biggest cheerleader
Mm.
that you will ever find. If you are a woman trying to accomplish anything at all, and Haley finds out about you, she will do
Mm.
everything she can
Aw.
to lift you up and support you. And
Mm,
she's been a really big advocate and champion for me even,
mhm,
and I've seen you do it for so many other women as well. And um, that just really stands out to me about you too.
mm,
So it makes perfect sense to me that you're
mm,
doing what you're doing because that's just the person that you
mm.
are.
That's really kind, Kristen. Thank you.
It's
That made me
true.
tear up. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, um, like I said earlier, it's humbling when you're doing something that maybe hasn't potentially been done in the way you're
Yeah.
trying to do it. And there's a lot of, in the last 4 years, like, no's, people just not responding to emails, virtual doors closed. And I think the exciting part now after 4 years is now there are seats at the table. Now there are doors being opened. And people are recognizing that the experience of physician families does matter. And so I think it's a really exciting time too to be doing this work. And yeah, so
Awesome.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the next
Yeah.
year brings. And this was a lot of fun. I'm
Yeah, this is
so
great.
happy, you know, to be
It's
invited.
good. It's fine. It's great to finally meet you because Kristen said, told me a lot
Yeah.
about you, and
Is it?
so we'll, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. This was a real pleasure,
Thank you so much, guys.
and we will be right back with a listener story. Hey, Kristen,
Yeah.
our anniversary's coming up.
Yes, that's right.
You know what I got you?
What?
A bouquet.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
They're Diva Dex mites.
That's why you
And
shouldn't
look how
have.
cute those faces are, and the
Uh,
little legs.
That
And
is kind of cute, I
you
have
know
to
what these
admit.
things do?
What?
They cause you to have like itchy, red, irritated eyelids.
That's not cute.
Well, it's a disease. It's actually a pretty common disease called Demodex blepharitis.
How do you know if you have it? What does it look like?
Well, you end up with this crusty, flaky buildup on your eyelashes, and it's pretty easy to see if you just look at them
That's
under a microscope.
pretty gross, though.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, you don't get grossed out. You
Okay.
got to get checked out.
Okay, that's a fair
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
You
All
got to go
right.
in.
All
You got
right.
and we'll look at your eyelids. You just go to eyelidcheck.com to get more information. All right.
Okay.
That's EYELID check.com to get more information about Demodex blepharitis. These cute little guys.
Yeah, it's the
There
most
you go.
romantic anniversary gift you've
That's-
ever given me.
You're welcome. All right, today we have a fan story from Kate D. Kate D says, I have been a dentist for 10 years and was humbly reminded recently of why we are required to confirm a patient's date of birth, not just the name.
Mm.
This is already a good
I
story.
think I know
can
where
tell.
this is headed. Yep.
I brought my patient into the dental chair for his booked appointment for a filling. Getting him to my surgery took a little bit longer than usual as he had an amputated leg, and getting both out of the waiting room chair and then into the dental chair was a bit tricky. I confirmed his first and last name, then proceeded to update his medical history on the computer to note he was an amputee and needed mobility assistance, as this was new info in his file. I asked when he had his leg amputated, as when he was last in a couple months ago, when I did his last filling, he still had his leg. He insisted that it had been gone for years. I insisted that he had 2 legs only 2 months ago.
Oh, no.
Turns out the patient was right, of course. There were 2 patients in the waiting room with the same first and last name. The other one had 2 legs and needed a filling. Oops.
Well, at least she found out before she started any dental work, because as if it's not insulting enough to be told, no, you did have a leg
Right.
2 months ago.
That's the thing that cracks me up, is like the trying to convince someone, no, I'm pretty sure you had a leg 2 months ago.
Says here in your chart.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
the
boy.
perils of documentation. Sometimes it is a good lesson though. Like when we
Yeah.
always, like when we do cataract surgery, like 5 different times between when
Yep.
they walk in through the door to
It's like
when
2-factor authentication. Make sure
Exactly.
they are who you say they are.
to when I like actually cut into an eyeball, like first name, last name, date of birth, which eye we're working on.
Yep.
Like 4 different times at least.
I've
Anyway,
always wondered, like, when you go to the doctor and when you check in, you give your name and date
Yeah.
of birth and all that. Okay, that's fine. Then the nurse comes and gets you, and like you do your weight and height and all that. You
Yeah.
give your name and date of birth again. Then they put you in a room, and then somebody else comes into the room, and then you got to get a name and date of birth again. I'm like, this is a little excessive. Like,
But then you hear stories like that,
yeah. So
and you're like, oh, that's
now
why.
I know it's more about
There's
that
a reason
these are 3
for that.
different people. They have to make sure they know who I am.
Thank you for that story, Kate D. You can send us your stories, knockknockhi@human-content.com. What a fun episode to hear about a different part of medicine.
That's right. It's kind of the invisible part that no one ever thinks about or talks about as much. So it's important to take a look.
I feel kind of bad. Like, I didn't fully understand and recognize the impact that my training had on my family.
Well, it's not something you need to feel bad about. It is what it is. It's not like you were being a jerk or something. It's just it is difficult, and it is nice to have it recognized by the partner and
some of the things she mentioned though were could I think really make a big difference.
Yeah.
Having an orientation or something.
Right.
Like when you're coming into residency.
Yeah, why wouldn't you want to orient the whole family, right?
Yeah,
like here's the grocery stores in the area, and here's the daycares, and
I think a lot of because Iowa did something like that.
They were better than most, I would say.
But not everybody, and it should be kind of just part of the whole thing.
Right, and like she said, it's a low bar to just have had anything at all.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think
let's raise the bar. Let's raise it. Let's get it up higher. Let's pole vault that. Let's do it.
Okay. I don't think we use swear words on this podcast.
All right. Sorry. You can bleep that out. All right. Great. That was a lot of fun. Let us know what you thought of the episode, and if you have suggestions for guests and things that you want us to discuss. You can email us, knockknockhi@human-content.com. Hang out with us on our social media platforms. We also have a nice little podcast family with Human Content on Instagram and TikTok @HumanContentPods. Check that out. Thank you to all the wonderful listeners leaving feedback and reviews. If you subscribe and comment on your favorite podcasting app or on YouTube, and give you a shout out, like @BradfordFreed6175 on YouTube.
Bradford Reed.
What did I say?
Reed.
Bradford Reed. Bradford Reed 6175 on YouTube said, I always know I'm going to learn something when a Knock Knock Hi/I episode drops.
Aww.
There you go. Yeah.
Hey.
Have you been listening? Have you been learning about Knock Knock I from me?
Full video episodes are up every week on Will's YouTube.
@Glaucomfleckens. We also have a Patreon. Lots of cool perks. Bonus episodes where we react to medical shows and movies. You can hang out with other members of the community. We're active in it. We're there. We're governing. And
we've gone from being a township to now we're the governors.
Yeah, it's a there's kind of you can't just have anarchy in a community. There's got to be order. All right, now there's not a lot of rules. All right, there's a few ordinances. But overall, it's a very free-flowing community.
Are there any HOAs?
No HOA fees.
Okay.
Well, there's fees, but not HOA fees. Early ad-free episode access, interactive Q&A live stream events, and much more. We can make fun of the HOAs in that community. That would be fun. Patreon.com/Glaucomfleckens, or go to Glaucomfleckens.com. Speaking of Patreon community perks, sometimes I get so tired of saying my own freaking name.
It's not your name.
I say it more than my real name now. I say Glaucomfleckens. I don't know what the.
I know it feels like you're coughing and spitting up all at the same time.
Go to Glaucomfleckens.com. Community, whatever. Patreon community perks. New member shout out to Jocelyn, Michelle H, and Roy R. Thank you, Jocelyn, Michelle H, and Roy R. I felt like I needed to say those again.
Kind of loved them the first time.
I kind of messed that up. Thank you guys for joining Patreon. And as usual, shout out to all the Jonathans. You ready? Patrick Lucia C, Sharon S, Omar Edward K, Stephen G, Jonathan F, Marion W, Mr. Granddaddy, Caitlin C, Brianna L, Leah D, KL, Rachel L, Keith G, JJH, Derek and Mary H, Susanna F, Mohammed K, Viga, Parker, Ryan, Medical Meg, Bubbless Salt, and Pink Macho.
We got some really fun names in there.
It's growing.
I really enjoy the ending there. Medical Meg, Bubbly Salt, and Pink Macho.
Yeah,
those are 3 good names.
It's good names. And Patreon Roulette. Shout out to someone on the emergency medicine tier. We have Julie P. Julie P, thank you for being a patron. And thank you all for listening. We are your hosts, Will and Kristen Flannery, also known as the Glaucomfleckens. Special thanks to our guest, Hayley Harlock. Our executive producers are Will Flannery, Kristen Flannery, Aaron Broccolini Corney, Rob Goblin Goldman, and Shanti Creekbook. Our editor and engineer is Jason Portizo. Our music is by Omer Benzvi. To learn about our Knock Knock Highs program, this is the part you've all been waiting for. To learn about our Knock Knock Highs program, disclaimer, ethics, policies, mission, verification, licensing terms, the HIPAA release terms. Go to where? Glaucomfleckens.com or reach out to us at knockknockhigh@human-content.com with any questions, concerns, or fun medical puns. Knock Knock High is a human content production.
Goodbye.
Hey, Kristen.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I come home from work and I just feel really run down.
Yeah, because, despite popular opinion, you actually do see a fair number of patients every day.
I do. My clinics are pretty busy, but I'm not the only physician that feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
So many people feel overwhelmed and burdened so much that work-life balance feels impossible.
Yeah, nobody gets into this job for the paperwork.
Most people, definitely not me. And but let me tell you about the Nuance Dragon Ambient Experience, or DAX for short.
Tell me.
This is AI-powered ambient technology. It sits there in the room with you. It's transforming healthcare with clinical documentation that writes itself.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
It's like having a Jonathan there.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
perfect.
I got some stats for you.
Ooh, I love stats.
You're going to love this. 7 minutes is saved per encounter by reducing clinical documentation time by 50%.
7 minutes. That's an entire surgery for you.
Yeah, that's what DAX can do for you. And across all specialties, 70% of physicians report a reduction in feelings of burnout and fatigue.
That's pretty incredible.
It really is cool technology. To learn more about the Nuance Dragon Ambient Experience, or DAX, visit nuance.com/discover DAX. That's nuance.com/discover DAX. Thanks for watching the episode. You can find more on that playlist over there. If you prefer to listen, or you just had your eyes dilated, you can binge full episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Or join the party over on Patreon, where you get early access episodes, hang out with us, get lots of exclusive bonus content. Hope you subscribe, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think.